Is this period of Yu-Gi-Oh! Actually really good? We're gonna discuss all of that today. Many players have criticized the Yu-Gi-Oh! Card game over the years for being expensive, with expensive staples and unattractive gameplay, formats that you have to sit out because they're just unenjoyable. Zero communication from Konami, and no idea when ban lists are dropping, and pricing drama, and a lot of really messy stuff. But in 2025, things are kind of shifting. Prices of staples are dropping consistently, formats are feeling a little bit better, and Konami is actually listening to players actively and communicating much better. So, can we finally say that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is at a good spot right now? Not necessarily, and this is what we'll talk about today. Before we begin, make sure to check out the sleepchief.de anniversary sale, 20 to 60% off every single product with 30 new ones, huge restocks all up until June 13th, and with the cherry on top of Galzo 5 for an extra 5% off. So yeah, it's big. Check it out in the link in the description below. Let's get into it. Starting off with staples and card prices, which is a big pain point over the years, especially for the normal average Joe who's just going to locals. Card prices have been dropping significantly thanks to four new rarity collection sets. These sets were actually so successful that the TCG quadrupled down and printed them into the ground to give many more players access to the best cards in the metagame today. And of course, a lot of old ones as well. Besides the newest ones, staples are now extremely accessible and have lowered in price across the board throughout the reprints in the last year alone. And the best staples and the most played staples are also heavily reprinted in OTSs and of course structure decks, with Blue Eyes White Dragon structure deck having basically 4 of the best cards in the game. With a common version of Ash Blossom, Valor, Infinite Impermanence, and Nibiru all in one $10 product, you can't really go wrong. And another thing that has been something a lot of TCG players have been complaining about, mixed rarities for different cards lowering the price. Now staples come in multiple rarities, and that's of course thanks to rarity collections as well. Budget and high rarity players can all enjoy the same extremely powerful and meta relevant cards. And this is shown that Konami is willing to change their rarity model over time gradually, but eventually with all leading to a good outcome, which is good prices and a variety of different rarities for different types of players. Hell, another example of this is the fact that in deck building sets like Crossover Breakers, you had cards that were both printed in a rare version, which is the base rarity in those sets, but also some of them getting a boost to a super rare. So essentially, 2 rarities of the same card in a core product, not even a reprint set, which is something that hasn't really been done before, except for like max rarity stuff, but those were really unattainable and expensive. And even the competitive decks are much cheaper because of all these reprint strategies, with Malice Ryziel and Mitsurugi, the top decks of the current format, being relatively inexpensive, especially if you look a year or 2 back into Snake Eyes format. Right now, when you go into YGO Pro, you're going into a tournament, you see the top 8 or 16 decks, you see that the average price runs for about $400 to $600, which is still obviously a lot. But is it a lot compared to Snake Eye format's $1,200 decks? Yes, super expensive engines, super expensive extra deck pieces, SP Little Knight running over $100. Now, it's a $10 super rare. And the engines themselves, also, like Mitsurugi, TCG exclusive, is basically all super rares and commons. And yes, some cards like Mulcharmies and of course Dominus Impulse remain expensive before being reprinted heavily. Even though Mulcharmy, Perulia, and Foals were already reprinted, they still remain at a pretty high price point because they weren't exactly reprinted in the right structure, especially Perulia. But lots of duelists have shown that you don't really have to play these decks. For example, Ryziel Fiendsmith decks don't play Dominus Impulse and can save a lot of money doing just that. So overall, prices and staples, the barrier overall has dropped significantly. Decks are pretty much half the prices they were a year or 2 ago, and players are obviously happy about those sets. Now, talking about game balancing and the format itself right now, I do have a lot to say about this format and some cards that are just a little bit too strong for being a hand trap. There has been a change in that front as well. While Konami still doesn't announce balance dates in advance, there has been a change in the TCG's philosophy to game design and balancing. The biggest change came in the form of 2 forbidden and limited lists that were revealed on stream in a YCS, which I think every one of you can agree was super hype. People in the venue and at home cheered, as you can see from panelist reactions across the internet. And yeah, this was a great decision to, one, let everybody know that the ban list is happening actually a few days in advance, which was really, really good. And obviously, it creates some sort of a connection with the community that Konami has kind of lost over the last decade. So communication is a bit clearer, but problematic cards are also being addressed accordingly, right? Not every floodgate or toxic card is banned, but look at the recent ban lists. Skill Drain, there can be only one. Goes in Match, Rivalry of Warlords, and of course Dimension Shifter. All cards that people have complained about, all cards that have been addressed over a span of a year. Even Gimmick Puppet Nightmare and Jaugen the Spiritualist were both banned on stage by Jerome McHale. And even though they weren't as relevant that format, it was still Konami doing something that they should have done. And yeah, banning Original Sinful Spoils, Baron de Fleur, Apollos Above the Goddess, and Abyss Dweller all have increasingly improved the following formats without those cards being legal. So Konami is actually succeeding in the ban lists. And again, if you go to the reaction videos of those ban lists, you can see people, streamers, pro players are all extremely happy with those results. And yeah, well, the ban list is not 100% perfect, but it is very much apparent that Konami is listening and taking into account the problem cards of the formats. Yeah, Baron and Apollosa weren't the obvious choices, but in hindsight, it changed the game for the better. And while these changes have been pretty wide and varied in card hits, they actually made a format that people seem to enjoy. With Malice Ryziel and Mitsurugi up top, it creates kind of a diverse, sort of like a 3-deck format. And Konami has left Droll and Lockbird and Artifact Lancia still legal for this format specifically. It might not always be peak game design or peak gameplay, sometimes it can actually be very miserable, and this is something that Konami still has to deal with, those lingering floodgates that are the necessary evil for each format that only get banned 10 years later. There are some answers, and the decks are a bit more balanced than they were before. And Konami is actually consistent about their philosophy of card design. Turn 1 dominance is not really there. Making an insane board turn 1 is still possible if your opponent opens no hand traps, but there is this back and forth that Konami is trying to design the game to go towards. For example, Monster Armies prevent the big combo decks from popping off, and Triple Tactics Talent and Crossout Designator being limited on the last Forbidden and Limited list makes sure that your hand traps resolve and you can actually go second successfully. So, while going first is extremely powerful, they made going second powerful as well. So yeah, while I still have a lot of things that are problematic with this format, and while I still just got back from an OTS championship that really pissed me off, Konami is listening, and that is just a fact. And another place where they're listening really hard is pricing. Even though pricing has been super dramatic over the last years and even meme-worthy, things are changing in a pretty positive direction. This year marked one of the biggest memes in Yu-Gi-Oh! Pricing history, and no, it's not the air fryers. I'm of course talking about the infamous card frames. These cheap picture frames were giving out as top cut pricing in some YCS events, with some giving in person and actually left in the venue empty and thrown over some side table in an event. And of course, this was the case with Jesse Cotton, just taking all the cards out of his $10 prize frame and leaving the frame in the venue and tweeting out that, hey, if anybody wants this, you can take it. And someone actually did take it and opened a Twitter account for that frame when it's now traveling the world, apparently. One thing did happen this year that kind of changed players' expectations on whether Konami is listening or not. Starting later this year, Premier events will offer new prize cards and new prize packs for players who do well in top big events. While some of these cards are kind of a weird selection for prize cards like a Card Trooper, but for higher placing, a new stamped Effect Veiler is going to be giving out as the first playable prize cards in, dude, I don't know, like seriously decades. And this was something that was imported over from the OCG. People were extremely happy about it, and I think it is something positive to say. And I will never stop taking credit for those stamped cards, dude. I made them first on Twitter. And this isn't the only good change that people are happy about. This also signifies something even more important. This is a proof that Konami is listening. This is a proof of Konami scrolling through Twitter and actually reading what we're posting. There's no way around it. They have to be looking at player feedback at this point. And again, shout out if there's like some community manager out there doing God's work to make all these things happen. This is good for the game. Yu-Gi-Oh! Has finally understood that in order to compete with Lorcana and with One Piece and Pokemon TCG, they have to start kicking up the prize support. So yeah, seems like Yu-Gi-Oh! In 2025 is more affordable, more balanced, and the pricing is going in a way of a good direction. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Don't forget the Sleeve Chief Anniversary Sale, 20 to 60% off. Check the link in the description to support the channel. Get 5% off on top of everything with code GALZO5. Thanks so much for watching. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.